I've talked on this channel before about the litigation going on regarding the training of large language model AIs using copyrighted material without the author's permission. Lawsuits like these have been filed by writers like Sarah Silverman and Michael Chabon and publications like the New York Times against the big AI players like OpenAI and Meta and so forth. A recently founded nonprofit organization called Fairly Trained might help to resolve disputes like this without resorting to the courts and the law. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. But first, a couple of obligatory disclaimers. First, what I'm going to say in this video is not legal advice, because if I were going to give you legal advice, I would need to understand your specific situation and needs. And right now, I'm just a random lawyer talking to you on the internet. And second, in this video, I'm going to be talking about matters of U.S. law. So if you are making an indie film outside of the United States, or if your production company is based outside the United States, then the legal concepts that I talk about in this video might not apply to you. Finally, if you found this video helpful, please like this video and subscribe to this channel so I can keep bringing you this kind of educational content for young, hungry, enterprising indie filmmakers like yourself. So, as I said, one of the big questions in these AI copyright lawsuits is whether it violates U.S. copyright law to train a large language model AI using copyrighted books and movies and plays and so on, other types of creative work. A common legal theory that's asserted by the plaintiffs in these cases, that is the people who have filed these lawsuits, is that if you train an AI using copyrighted material, everything that that AI generates is in some sense a quote-unquote derivative work based on the copyrighted material. An example of a derivative work would be a sequel to a movie like Bad Boys 2. Although Bad Boys 2 doesn't use the same dialogue and shot choices, special effects, and so on as Bad Boys 1, it clearly contains some of the creative elements of the first movie, like the fact that it stars Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, they're playing the same characters, and so on. According to this perspective, if ChatGPT was trained using Sarah Silverman's book, basically everything that ChatGPT says in its answers to users' questions, in some sense infringes Sarah Silverman's copyright in her book, even if those answers don't say anything about Sarah Silverman or recite the content of her book. This type of litigation is still very new, so not a lot of judges have weighed in on the issue of whether this theory has any merit. But the few judges who have discussed the issue have ruled that it doesn't. That is, the mere fact that ChatGPT or some other AI was trained using Sarah Silverman's book doesn't mean that every response that's given by one of those AIs to a user violates Sarah Silverman's copyright. The reasoning behind rejecting this legal theory has been that ordinarily, to find that one creative work infringes the copyright in another, a court has to find what's called substantial similarity between the two works. So to infringe Sarah Silverman's copyright in her book, I'd have to write a book that's substantially similar to it, whether we're talking about the dialogue, the plot, the characters, or some other creative element. But of course, it's not the case that everything that ChatGPT says is substantially similar to Sarah Silverman's book, because obviously large language model AIs like ChatGPT can talk about virtually anything. So according to the view of the court so far, it's wrong to suggest that every output by an AI that happens to have been trained using Sarah Silverman's book is in itself a copyright infringement. I tend to agree with this way of thinking. I mean, if we said that every statement that comes out of an AI violates the copyright of every author whose books were used to train it, that would be kind of like saying that a high school student who reads To Kill a Mockingbird in English class and then goes on to write a novel of his own necessarily violates the copyright in To Kill a Mockingbird because that book was used to teach him how to write. And if that were what copyright law required, nobody would be able to write anything at all, because you clearly have to read other people's work in order to learn how to write. Still, there are some people who have been disappointed by the approach that's been taken by the court so far, because they think that it's unfair for AI developers like OpenAI and Meta to train their AIs using copyrighted works without getting the permission of the authors of those works to do that. One guy has come up with a possible solution to this problem that bypasses the law and the courts completely. Recently, Ed Newton-Rex, who was an executive at Stability AI, the makers of the Stable Diffusion image generator, resigned from Stability because he didn't like the approach that Stability was taking to training its AI. Stability was doing basically the same thing with copyrighted images that OpenAI has done with copyrighted books. That is, it was using millions of copyrighted images to train the Stable Diffusion AI without getting the creators or the artist's permission. After leaving Stability, Newton-Rex then started a nonprofit organization called Fairly Trained, which offers a certificate to AI developers who get permission from the creators of copyrighted works to use their material to train AIs. In other words, Fairly Trained says, hey, developers, if you show us that you're getting a license to use the works that you're using to train your AIs, we'll give you a certificate that says you train your AIs fairly. As of the date of this video, 9 AI developers have gotten a certification from Fairly Trained, most of which have to do with AIs that generate music. Since Newton Rex just started this organization, we've yet to see whether most developers are going to voluntarily seek out a certificate from it. Maybe you could argue that no one's going to voluntarily get permission from artists to use their work to train AIs unless the courts effectively force them to do that. But I don't think that's necessarily true. Sometimes the process of voluntary certification does work as a form of regulation of an industry. For example, you've probably heard of an organization called UL Solutions, which was previously called Underwriters Laboratories. Or maybe you've at least seen the UL logo on electrical appliances. When you see the UL logo, that means that the product that you're looking at has been certified by UL Solutions, which means it's been tested to make sure that it meets UL Solutions safety standards. UL isn't a government agency, and the law doesn't require you to get UL certification if you make electrical appliances. However, a lot of retailers have still decided to require that any electrical appliances they sell have this UL certification. This is because UL has come to represent good safety standards. So manufacturers of electrical appliances have come to see getting UL certification as helpful in making sure that they sell safe products and that their consumers understand that they're doing that. Maybe an organization like Fairly Trained could end up playing a role like UL Solutions if enough people got concerned about the unauthorized use of copyrighted works to train AIs, and enough people decided that they won't use AIs that are trained that way. It would be in the best interest of developers like OpenAI to make sure that they're certified by Fairly Trained or an organization like that to ensure that people will continue to use their AIs. What's the impact of all this on independent filmmaking? There are many possible impacts because AI in the near future is bound to start having a significant impact on all aspects of filmmaking, from writing scripts to CGI. For example, some writers are already using ChatGPT to comment on or even draft parts of their scripts. If you're a writer and you're worried about using an AI to help write your screenplay because you're concerned about this fair training issue, organizations like Fairly Trained may benefit you by encouraging the development of AIs that are trained without the unauthorized use of copyrighted material. The same could be true if you're a visual effects artist, but you don't want to use visual effects that are generated by an AI that's trained in a way that you don't think is fair, and so on. So I hope this has been helpful to you in understanding the current state of play in these AI copyright disputes, and thanks for watching.